Welcome back to another video. This video is actually in relation to the Introduction to Networking course. However, if you also want to learn how to set up SSH and DHCP pool through Packet Tracer, this video might be useful to you. First of all, let's take a look at the assignment expectations. So you'll see here we have two mirrored networks, one with router 1 and one with router 2. This is our .0 network, and again, we're basing this off of the third octet here, .0. And this one is our .1 network over here, this green circle. So we want to go ahead and set this up in Packet Tracer. So we will start with the yellow network. And so we'll just drag in our router 4331, go under switches, take out a 2960 and end devices. And then we'll just do a few PCs as such. Under the lightning bolt for connections and just standard connections, router to switch, and then switch to individual PCs. Once we get all of these connected, it'll take a second for the switch to green up with our PCs. However, remember that our routing ports are always shut, so we're going to have to do some configuring on the router. That's for mostly where we're going to spend today's video, over here in the CLI. Always, whenever you open up the CLI for any Cisco device for the first time, it's going to ask you if you want to set up the initial configuration dialog. Typically, the answer is no. So you can type in N or just no, hit enter, and now you see it says press return to get started. Hit return again, and it will be followed by the host name of the router, so the name of this device. And currently, I believe this is called privileged user mode. So we want to enter privileged user exec mode, which we do by typing in enable, or we can type in the shorthand of just EN. Now that we're in privileged user exec mode, we can take a look at our current running configuration by using the command show running config. Okay, so here we see the current configuration, and again, spacebar will show us new chunks of the configuration, and hitting enter will go line by line. So we can hit space a couple of times to go through the whole configuration, and we know that it's finished whenever it says end here, and we're back to router hashtag or our privileged user exec mode. So let me go ahead and just highlight the entire running configuration, which is up to this point right here, right after building configuration ... Everything here that's highlighted, that is the current configuration. And when we look at these configuration files, think about every line you see as a command that is entered into the device. So whenever we want to change anything, for example, if we wanted to change our interface gigabit Ethernet 000, we would enter this exact command, interface gigabit Ethernet 000, and then we would do either no shut to open up the port, which we're going to do right now, or we could do a couple of other things as in adding an IP address. So let's go ahead and do our opening up of the ports. So we'll do the shorthand. So INT for interface, G 0/0/0. And that is the same as typing out all interface gigabit Ethernet 0/0/0. Hit enter. And oh, my mistake. We're actually not allowed to do this in user exec mode. We need to elevate our privileges by typing in configure terminal, or just conf t for short. So once we're in configuration mode, you'll see that we have the config in parentheses right here. Think of this as essentially God mode on the router. You can change and edit anything you want. So only enter this mode when you know exactly what you're going to do. Otherwise, you might end up breaking the router. So again, we'll type in INT G 0/0/0. And now you can see that we are in the interface because we have TAC IF or -IF. So the first thing we want to do, we want to open the port, right? Because right now it's all shut. We see that right here. But if I type in no shutdown or just shorthand no shut, it immediately switches. And we see that our port is now open. And again, our switch port is taking a little time to open up all the way and pass data. But for right now, we know that our routing port has greened up properly. And we want to add an IP address. And let's take a look at the picture again, because we have our IP schemes here. So this is our yellow network that we're working on, which is our .0 network. So the IP scheme is 192.168.0.0, and it's a /24. So let me just take note of that here on Packet Tracer. Close that for a second. And let's just do the little note tab. And right here, we'll just put in 192.168.0.0/24. There we go. So now we can keep track of what network this is. And open back up our router. And we still want to be on our interface. And we'll double check that we are with the -IF. And we're going to add an IP address. And the command for this is literally just typing in IP address 192.168.0. And we can't do .0 because that's our subnet address or our network address, but we'll go do the first available, which is .1. And then we enter in our subnet mask, and we know a /24 is 255.255.255.0. And that should work just fine. And so now, if we come to one of our PCs and we go into our desktop and IP configuration, we're going to leave it on static for now, but we are going to change this to DHCP by the end of the video. And we give the next available address, 192.168.0.2. That's a /24, so that's fine. And our default gateway is 192.168.0.1, which is our router interface that we just configured. So let's go ahead and close out of that. Go to command prompt. Double check that it accepted our IP configuration with ipconfig. And we can see right here it did. We have our gateway. We have our computer's address. So let's ping from our computer to our gateway. So ping 192.168.0.1. And we can ping our gateway, which means that PC3 right here is able to talk to router 1 just fine, which is exactly what we want. Now, first, I would like to set up the IP DHCP pool because it's very quick and very, very easy. So we're going to type in exit to get out of the interface. And from here, we're going to type in IP DHCP pool. And I'm going to call this pool users in all caps. This is just the name. It doesn't matter what you put here, all caps or not, but that is the name that I'm choosing. Now you'll see that we're in the DHCP configuration mode because, again, right here in the parentheses, it says DHCP tag config. And if we do question mark, we can see which commands are available to us in DHCP configuration mode. And there's a few things we have to do. First of all, we have to tell the DHCP server what the default router is or the default gateway. In this case, it is our .1 address that we've already assigned to the interface on the router. So what we'll say is default TAC router. And after that, we're just going to give the IP address. So 192.168.0.1. Right here, we don't have to give the subnet mask, as it will get the subnet mask from our network address that we'll give right now. And for that, we type in network space 192.168.0.0, which is our network address for the /24, and 255.255.255.0. And okay, so let's see. Other than that, if you want to give a DNS server, you can, and we will for this example. We'll do DNS TAC server. We'll just do Google's, which is 8.8.8.8. And that's it. So now we'll go ahead and exit out of our DHCP. And now let's go ahead and double check our running configuration, because if I do show, or actually really quick side note, reminder, when you're in configuration mode, you cannot do the show running TAC config command. It doesn't understand the command. So you have to force it to do that whenever you're in configuration mode. And you can do this by typing in do show running TAC config. And you'll see the command will work just fine. So now, at the very top of our configuration right here, you see our DHCP pool that we configured. So again, each of these lines is a separate command that we entered. And so whenever you see any editing on the configuration file, you can think of each of these lines as a specific command that was entered. And you can copy this configuration file as a command into the router interface. So we can see our G000 port right here. It no longer has the shutdown line because we got rid of it with no shutdown. And it does have an IP address because we added it on. So those are our two changes right now. We have our DHCP pool and we have our IP address on the routing interface. So let's come back over here to our desktop. Under IP configuration, we're going to switch it to DHCP. And it should request it and it should come right back with the same address that we had before, which is fine because the server knows that that is the first available. So let's go ahead and close out of that. Although actually, if you look back here really quick, you'll see that it did work because we have our 8.8.8.8, which is the DNS server that we're automatically assigning. So this is going to make it a lot easier when we're dealing with a large amount of computers and users. So in this example, we only have 3, but most companies are going to have upwards of 30, 40, 100, 200, 500, possibly 1,000 or a few thousand employees. And this will make it much faster for assigning IP addresses. And we can come here to each of our computers. We'll just go under here and click on DHCP, give it a second to assign, and we got our .3 address, which is fine. Come over here to our last one, do the same thing. And we have .4, and that is working perfectly fine. Now let's just double check that we can ping back and forth, which I'm sure we can. We were pulling an address, but just to be safe, 192.168.0.1, and we're pinging, so that's great. All right, Next up, whenever we're talking about securing our router, there's a few things specifically that we always want to do. First of all, we always change the host name. We never leave it at just router. So for this example, if we look back here on our assignment, we know that we want to change our router to R1, and then our second network will be R2. Now to do that, the command is hostname, and then whatever name you want to do. So in this case, just R1. And you'll see as soon as I enter the command, it takes effect right here. And if we ever want to save our commands and save our progress, because remember, there are two configurations on our router. There's the running configuration, which is actively happening right now, but there's a startup configuration as well. And whenever a router reboots, it will copy whatever is on the startup configuration to the running configuration, meaning that if you haven't saved it, then if you haven't saved the running configuration to the startup configuration, whenever you reboot your router, it's going to copy the startup being a blank file to your running config, meaning all your progress will be lost. So you always have to remember to do write memory, and that should be fine. Let's see, once that's done, okay, we're good. So we've saved our progress, we've got our host name. Now we want to set up some sort of a login requirement. I don't want just anybody to be able to interface into our router. So to do that, we're going to type in username. And for this, I will do my first.last, Matthew.Wester, space privilege 15, which is the highest privilege you can give on a Cisco iOS device. And after that, if I type in password, it's going to store my password in plain text, and I don't want that. So what I am going to do is I'm going to type in secret instead. And this is going to hash my password in the configuration file, so not just anybody looking at the configuration will see my password clear as day. And for the password, I'm just going to do Cisco123. Okay, hit enter there. And now if I do show run, hit space, oh, and I can see it right here. This is the command that I just entered. Username, Matthew.Wester, privilege 15, secret. And then you see all this random mumbo jumbo. Now what this is this is my password, Cisco123, but it's hashed. And this is how it's stored in the configuration file, so that way no other users will be able to see my password and take note of it. All right, next up, we need to require a login, because right now if I exit out, and I'm at the starting screen here and I hit enter, it doesn't ask me for a login at all. So it has a username, but it's not using it. So we'll go back into enable mode and then conf t. And from here, we're going to go into line con 0, which is for our configuration line, also our console port. So this is where we're physically plugging into our router from that little blue rollover cable that you've seen, the console cable. Now this port, we're going to type in login local. And that should be it. So now let's go ahead and exit, do write memory again. So we're saving our progress and we're going to exit out all the way. And now if I hit enter, you'll see it's going to request a username. Now, in order to set up SSH, you have to have a username available on the device, and you have to have login local on your VTY lines, which is not your console port. So we need to set that up as well. So let me go ahead and just test this out with Matthew.Wester and then Cisco123, and we're back in our router. But like I said, we also need to add that to the VTY lines. So we're going to go back into configuration mode, conf t. And now what we're going to do is we're going to type in line VTY, which stands for virtual teletype. Now think of the virtual teletype ports as virtual ports, right? They're not real ports that you can plug into on the router. They don't have an interface card. However, they are accessed over the remote connections. So anytime you SSH, think about it as taking up one of the 15 virtual ports available on your router. So there's 0 through 15. So I guess 16 total. So whenever we do this, we're typing in line VTY 0 through 15. That is a range. So now we're in a range of all of our virtual ports. And so anything we type here is going to take effect to all of our virtual ports. And we're going to type the same thing, login local, meaning that whenever we try to connect through one of our virtual ports remotely, we have to access it through the username that is stored on the device in the configuration file. So login local. And now we want to say how we're allowing people in and out of our network, which we're going to use SSH, which for that, we're going to type in transport input SSH, or the shorthand, that could be trans in SSH. And then for the output, trans out SSH as well. Go ahead and exit out of that. And now, in order to actually get it to work properly, there's a few other things we have to do. Specifically for your assignment, I want you guys to also add a banner. Now the command for that would be banner MOTD for message of the day. And then you'll pick a delimiting character In my case, I like to use the @ symbol. So now I can type whatever I want and take as much space as I want. This is the assignment router for the class. Do not access if you don't have permission. And that's about good. So go ahead and close this out with another @ symbol. And that is the end of our banner. So now if we exit out, and we hit enter again, you'll see not only is it asking us for a username, but it's also displaying our banner right away, which is exactly what we want. All right, let me log back in now. So Matthew.Wester, Cisco 123. And from here, in order to get SSH working, there's a few other things we've got to do. We have to enable it with first of all, go back into conft. So IP SSH version 2. And it says there's something we got to do first. It says, please create RSA keys. Okay, well, to do that, we want to type in crypto key gen or generate RSA. And it's asking us, well, no, you can't do that yet. You have to first do a domain name. Oh, well, okay. So for that, we do IP domain name, and we're just going to do example.com. All right, so now if we go back, and you'll see there's a whole trail of these commands that you have to do before you can do the others. So now if we try to do our crypto key generate RSA, you'll see it's going to ask us for how many bits in the modulus. Default, a safe bet would always be 2048. So we're going to take a second. It's going to create the keys. They're done. All right. And so now I can go ahead and enable IP SSH version 2. And you'll see there's no backlash. It's able to take the command just fine because we first had to create our domain name, and then we had to create the RSA crypto key. Then we had to enable the actual SSH. So that should be everything required for SSH to work. Let's go ahead and do write memory, close out of this. And now what we're going to do, we're going to come onto one of our PCs. We're going to go into the command line here on command prompt, and we're going to type in SSH-L and username Matthew.Wester, and then the IP address 192.168.0.1, which is our gateway. And we know that it works right away because it's prompting us for the password for that account, which Cisco 123. And now I am in the router, and you'll see our banners displayed. And from here on this other computer, I can remote successfully into our router, and I can type in configuration T. I can do show run. I can do anything configuration changes that I want to from here without physically having to be present with the router, which that is the bulk of your assignment, is setting this up with a banner with SSH enabled for all 3 computers and having DHCP pool active. Now from here, okay, so if I pull up our picture again, you'll see that there are 2 networks here. So you will have to go on and do the exact same thing again, mirrored. And for the IP scheme, instead of being 192.168.0.0/24, it will be .1.0/24. Other than that, the configurations will be the exact same. The entire setup will be the exact same, but it is required that you have both of these mirrored networks set up like this. So that way on Thursday, when we go through this, we can all move forward together as opposed to having to wait for people to play catch up. So make sure you have both networks in the same packet tracer file, meaning that the next step after you get to here would be making your new network right over here next to it. That's pretty much it. So if there are any questions, you have the Discord information, or if you're just watching this on YouTube, feel free to comment down below and I will respond as soon as I can. I hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching.